Vince, and thank you for talking to me today. As you know, we are running an initiative here at BDO, which is aimed at gathering views from across the market about the appeal of natural resources as an industry for young people to get into career-wise. I personally think this is a pretty interesting topic, and not just because I'm a millennial myself, but also because the team I am a part of here at BDO work with oil and gas, mining, and renewables companies. And these industries are, of course, instrumental to the world. It's where our energy and built materials come from. But now more than ever, it's a time of great transition for these industries, and a large part of it requires companies to plan for the future. And that includes attracting new talent and also developing the skills needed for the future. So here's where I thought speaking to you would help us shed some light on the gap between the workforce of the future and the industry as a whole, because I think you're in a pretty unique position in that you're in contact both with the students and students of different ages and with the industry and companies themselves. So just to start us off, please, could you give me a bit of an overview of your background and your current role?
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Martina. I'm very happy to support this initiative. I'm a chemical engineer by training. I spent about 35 years in industry, mainly working for energy companies. So companies like ExxonMobil, where I spent 15 years. Spent another 15 years at a company called Nalco, which is a very big water management company, later bought by Suez. So I've worked in technical roles, commercial, and the last roles I was involved in, I was general manager for our Europe, Africa, Middle East, former Soviet Union business. So I had a very large portfolio over 50 countries, many thousands of people, and quite a big business. So 35 years in industry. Then I had a couple of career changes. Worked in a school as a careers advisor and worked in executive search for a number of years. However, now I've decided to, over the last few years, decided to now be more in a portfolio career. So 2 days a week, I'm at Nottingham University, where I'm a professor in the chemical environmental engineering department, where I support the students with internships and graduate jobs. I still work in executive search, where I look to find people for the energy sector, mainly around senior and executive and board level. And I work with business schools, where I'm a energy sector career coach to students studying master's degrees, MBAs, etc. I also do a lot of personal career guidance and mentoring of people across many different sectors and industries, etc. So I'm very happy to speak to you today. Obviously, I'm speaking to you as Vince Pizzoni, the individual, as opposed to, I don't pretend to be speaking for the university or anybody else. I'm speaking for myself. So hopefully that's okay.
Yes, of course it is. Thank you. Seeing that you have such a central kind of role in contact with different groups of people, different demographics, and with different priorities and aspirations, in your experience working at Nottingham University, what are the typical reasons you hear from students as to why they want to undertake this kind of path in this discipline?
Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons. First of all, I'm not saying it's the most important, but if they looked at the salaries of different degrees, they would probably see that chemical engineering is usually number 2 or 3 highest, usually with medicine and dentistry. Okay, so chemical engineering tends to be the highest paid of all the engineering degrees, and that's probably because a lot of the engineers go into oil and gas, which is highly paid. They go into investment banking, which is highly paid, etc. So I think they're aware that compensation is a very important thing. I think the second reason they might go into it is it's a very broad degree, and of course, if you look at the jobs market, graduate jobs market, probably 50%, 60% of the jobs can be approached with any degree. But obviously, if you've got an engineering degree, that allows you even more opportunities. So they see particularly chemical engineering as opening up opportunities in engineering sector and also in some of the newer areas like biotechnology, for example, and other areas that are becoming increasingly important. So I would say the breadth of opportunities that the chemical engineering degree allows you to do is probably another reason why people do chemical engineering. And I think also it is an interesting degree to do. It's hard work. You're not going to have many hours free during the week, unlike some of the other subjects. But actually, it's a very enjoyable degree. It combines obviously practical work with lectures and other things. And I think a lot of the students find it very interesting to do. But I think probably the ultimate reason is probably what I said a little bit earlier: employability. Employability is very, very high with chemical engineering, and I think that's probably a key factor today.
Right. And as you mentioned, the oil and gas industry, did you notice a shift in desire from students in getting into this industry over the last years?
Well, there's been a change. If I think back to when I graduated some 30, 40 years ago, everybody wanted to get into oil and gas or chemicals. There's no doubt about that, and that's where the jobs were. What's happened over time, of course, is that other industries have become important for chemical engineers. So you will find chemical engineers working in food and drink, luxury goods, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, other industries, a whole range of different areas, because it's such a broad, all-encompassing degree. So things have happened outside of that. I'd say oil and gas is still an important area to the students to consider, but probably over time, there's become an increasing interest in working in what I would call the renewable, environmental, sustainability sectors. Now, I wouldn't say that oil and gas they've stopped wanting to apply there and they only want to apply in the other. That hasn't happened yet. But there's certainly, I would say, a greater interest. It's probably happened over the last maybe 10 plus years. I've noticed that at the business schools as well as the university, that students want to talk more perhaps about renewables, sustainability, environment, etc. And oil and gas maybe less so. However, there's still quite a lot of students who still go into oil and gas.
Right. And of course, oil and gas is not just about the traditional side of things. So, for instance, if we talk about innovation, the oil and gas has potentially a big place in the future in the hydrogen space, for example, at least for the moment, because most of the hydrogen currently comes from natural gas. So do you find that the interest in renewables is tied mainly to the energy transition?
Well, if you look at what's happening in the energy market, you've got the BPs and Shells of this world who are in transition, and there's a lot of interest from the students in going to companies that are in the transition, particularly because they're those big ones. You know, it's great to join a BP or a Shell. The problem they have with if they say I want to focus on hydrogen or I want to focus on battery storage, a lot of the companies are fairly small, so they're not so easy to find for the students. Yeah. I mean, that's probably my job, because I probably know them more. But secondly, they're not going to be recruiting this at the same level that those bigger companies are. So although the students may come to me and say, I'm very interested in hydrogen, whether it's blue hydrogen or green hydrogen, but there aren't many companies actually involved in it yet. I think that will grow over time. So we can have a good discussion about it. But if I said to them, yeah, but there's 2 or 3 small companies involved with hydrogen, or you can go and join a BP or a Shell in transition, probably the BP Shell would still become the one that they would go for because they know it. The smaller companies, you don't know whether they're going to be there in 5 years' time.
Yeah, that's right.
So it is an issue that the renewables market has not evolved yet to the stage of where the oil and gas has.
I see. And how involved are companies in terms of raising awareness about their industry among university students? For example, by speaking at universities or recruiting from within universities, does that happen regularly?
Well, I can tell you some of the things that we do, and there is a lot of interaction with industry. First of all, there are a number of us in the department who come from an industry background, and we have very strong links. So, for example, I have very strong links with ExxonMobil and other companies that I've worked for. and other of my colleagues have exactly the same situation. So first of all, we have very strong links with industry. Of course, we have a lot of projects ongoing that we do jointly with industry, potentially either in research or other areas. So there's a very strong links there. The other thing is that we do a lot of career events where we bring industry figures in. So, for example, apart from the careers fairs where clearly we have companies there presenting to the students, we have lots of conferences, panels, workshops, and things like that where we actually bring in specialists from industry to talk to the students. So, for example, I can think over the last year we had a food one where we brought in food manufacturing companies to talk to the students. We've had energy ones where we brought in people from the energy sector. In fact, quite a wide range. We brought in the energy panel included somebody from oil and gas, somebody from renewables, somebody who worked with the government, and somebody who worked in some other area involved with energy. So I would say the links that we have with industry and in terms of bringing in people that can talk to the students about careers and things like that is actually very good. And we try and maintain that. I mean, it's important. It's important to mention here that we have students who do summer internships and year in industry with companies, as well as obviously graduate jobs when they finish. And I, again, work in that area, and we have a lot of students in our second and third years who get industrial placements with companies. And some of those companies actually come directly to us because they like our students so much.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate to see that, and hopefully that's something we can continue.
Yes. And just moving on to the kinds of skills needed, what kinds of skills are particularly in demand at the moment in general? And are there enough students with those skills, or is there a gap in the market?
I don't think there's a gap. Particularly the skills that the employers are looking for. I mean, I could probably list a whole bunch of them, but clearly they're always looking for students who can work well in teams, because teamwork, particularly working with multifunctional teams, is important. We do a lot of teamwork in our degree, and I'm sure in other chemical engineering degrees around the country. We do a lot of design projects where we have teams of perhaps 5 to 6 students involved working together. The other thing about those teams is they're not only potentially multifunctional teams, but they're quite diverse in terms of their backgrounds. You can imagine we have a lot of international students at our university, as at other universities. So the students are having to work with people from different cultural backgrounds. And again, they will find that when they go into industry. So I think that's another important skill that employers are looking for. It's something around emotional intelligence, if I can call it that, the ability to be able to understand how you work, but also how you work with others, and understand their backgrounds and abilities, etc., to get the best out of people. So I think emotional intelligence is important. I think also another skill that employers are looking for are strong technical skills, particularly, if you can imagine, around coding and having advanced Excel skills and things like that. And again, those are the sorts of things that we are including in our curriculum to help the students develop those. And of course, when they go and do their summer internship or year in industry, that helps them develop those skills as well. So I think it's a combination of soft and hard skills that industry is looking for. The hard skills we can give through a lot of the things that we teach the students and they're involved in the design projects and things like that. And I think a lot of the soft skills they get partly through that, partly through things that they do outside extracurricular and what have you, and also partly through a work experience that they do.
Yeah. And as you work with younger students as well, are this mainly science students or students across a range of disciplines? And also, have you found any trends in terms of their interests and what they want from their careers?
I think in terms of their careers, they quite a lot of the students I work with probably can't see too far ahead about where they want to go. So in a way, I suppose my job is to help signpost potential routes. So I know I've been through technical, commercial, marketing, ultimately to leading a major business unit. So I can almost talk them through the type of career that may evolve for them, or they may end up having a much more of a technical career. And a lot of them don't know when they first go in exactly what they're going to be doing. And I haven't really found a lot of if I go back to when I graduated and since then to today, I think a lot of the students are still very much in that same thinking, trying to think ahead, but not really knowing what they want to do until they actually get into their first job. And then they're starting to get a feeling about which direction they may want to go in. But until they've done that, it's very hard for them to probably think ahead where they want to end up. Some may have a vague idea of something called management. Everybody seems to want to go into management, but as you know, management means many things to many people, and it doesn't necessarily end up being what they think it might end up being. So again, what we try and do is help support them to understand a bit more what that is, and at some stage get them exposed to leadership activities, which they may do both in their academic work, or of course some of them may be involved in sporting activities or other things where they're involved in leadership already.
Yeah. It's interesting because, of course, when you're so young, you don't have an understanding of what's out there. So it's quite unclear what your options could actually be. And one thing I wanted to mention is that through the surveys that we have run with A-level students, a lot of them have actually expressed no interest whatsoever in oil and gas and mining. And the main reason is that they see it as environmentally detrimental. And actually, many of them have also said that they wouldn't consider a future in these industries, mainly because of that. So do you think there is an issue here, not just with this specific demographic of younger students, but with maybe society in general? Is there enough awareness of what the natural resources industry does as a whole, or are the negative perceptions kind of tarnishing the positive ones? What's your general feeling?
I think there's a lack of knowledge. Absolutely. I do lots of talks in schools. I talk to careers, STEM background, for example, and I talk about oil and gas. Often it comes up the comments about, oh, it's a dirty, smelly, horrible industry that's polluting this, polluting that. Now, they have a very narrow view, of course, I believe, of the industry. And in fact, when I tell them that if I took away everything out of this lecture room that had come from oil and gas, they'd actually be sitting out on the grass with very few clothes on and nothing else. And yeah, I think a lot don't appreciate exactly how much our society has been built up on the back of oil and gas. And if we think back to the Industrial Revolution with coal, well, I sort of think the oil and gas maybe it was the next revolution, and now we're moving to the next one. But the reality is, we need bright people in the industry as much now, if not more so, than we needed before, because one of the ways we're going to get through the transition is through technical innovation. And that comes through having bright, smart people coming into the industry, not on the outside moaning and groaning about it. So my view very strongly is that the oil and gas industry wants good people to come in, because that is the way it is developing. And if you look at most companies, they're now probably moving away from being an oil and gas company to being an energy company, right? So you look at what Shell and BP particularly are doing, and I think the American ones will move that way as well. They are moving towards being energy companies. Oil and gas will play a role in our energy portfolio for many years ahead, albeit perhaps diminishing, but it will play a major role. I mean, if you look at the UK energy mix, 40% is gas today, 40% is renewables, 20% is nuclear. That is not going to change enormously over the next few years. Much as I know our Prime Minister wants us to be the Saudi Arabia of wind turbines, offshore wind. Well, we will get there, but it'll take time, and gas won't disappear. And there's an awful lot of gas around the world. The other thing, of course, is that oil is still needed for converting into downstream products. We don't yet have the technologies to be able to move away from that. So I think oil and gas can be around a long time, but we actually need great people. Students need to be thinking about it, and I will try and sell it as much as I can, as well as other people will. We need them into the industry because we need bright minds to develop the technical innovations.
Yes. Great, thank you. Well, just on that note, and I guess final question, from a company perspective, do you think there's something specific that companies should be doing more or less of to raise awareness about what they do? Because I know you mentioned the larger ones moving to being energy companies now, but in the mid-market and smaller companies, what chances do they have of attracting talent, and how could they do that better?
I think companies need to do a number of things. First of all, they need to be getting out more into schools and universities. I think we're doing a good job, but I remember when I was at the school, it's quite hard to get people to come along and give talks to the students. I mean, I can do the talk, but it's always good to get somebody in from the industries. So I think they need to be getting out more. I think they also need to be we need to be attracting more women into the sector, right? Because that is very important. At the moment, women represent quite a low proportion of engineers. Actually, it's quite interesting. If I look back to when I was at university, we had one female amongst 40 students, 40 in my year, wow, right, doing chemical engineering. Today at Nottingham, we have nearly 200 in the year group, and about a third are female. So things have improved, but we're still not quite at the sort of 50%, if you feel that's a sort of a good target to aim for. So we need to have more of those initiatives like women in engineering, women in science and engineering. We need to also be showing those students how exciting those careers are in the industry, right? And showing them that there are some tremendous career progressions that you can have in the industry. Because when you look at industries to join, it's not just about starting salary. It's about, am I going to have a career here that's going to be interesting? So they need to be much more spent on that. And that includes things like having mentors when you join a company who can support you as you go through your career. Having people who sponsor you in the organization that will enable you to develop a career in the company, and actually showing you that you're not just one of these companies that we seem to have, unfortunately, where very much hire and fire type. So oil price drops, get rid of 10,000 people, oil price increase, that is wrong. I think what we need to be doing is bringing in these young people and developing their careers. And actually, if there's a downturn, not getting rid of them, because actually we're getting rid of the future. And of course, they'll go away very unhappy. They've just joined, and they're going to go away unhappy. So there's lots I think the industry can do. I think its public profile is generally not brilliant. Very often it's a case of keeping the head down rather than actually being open. And I think part of that is they're probably worried about, I don't know, environmentalists who sort of, would be very negative about the industry. But, you don't get anywhere without dialogue. Very, very important to have that dialogue and show people what we are doing in the industry to make it a better world for everyone. And also to prove actually that without oil and gas, we would not have advanced as much as we have done over the years.
Yeah, definitely. And the world would be a completely different place than it is now.
We wouldn't be speaking now, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't know what we'd be using now. I couldn't communicate with you, probably.
It wouldn't be great.
Yeah. So I think it plays a significant part in our lives, and we need to educate more people about what we're doing and show them that we're part of, as somebody else said to me once, we're part of this. We're not just part of the problem, we're actually part of the solution. And if you don't involve us in the solution, you won't solve it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you, Vince. that was very interesting and lots of good thoughts all there. So thank you again, and we'll speak again very soon. Bye.